Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio everybody. What is going on? It is Galeriot here, and welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi video. And today we are going to be doing a spoiler talk on Danmachi Volume 18. It is finally the time to do a proper spoiler review and talk for this light novel. We've been waiting over a year for this. Of course, we did a spoiler talk based on obviously very loose translations from the people who obviously managed to obtain the JP light novel last year. Of course, same time actually. It was exactly in January when the light novel released. I think a week before the date we have this year, of course, for the English release, Jan 23rd. I think last year it was around Jan 14th or 15th or something like that basically. So it's been a little bit over a year since those translations, and obviously my spoiler talk, which I think is my highest viewed video by the way as well. And I've been waiting for this because of course since then a lot of people have had very divisive thoughts on volume 18, and I've been saying to people for a very long time, let's wait until the official translation comes out because a lot more should be clearer because of the translation. Now of course I have some things to talk about the translation itself, but we'll get on to that in a moment. Now, of course, like I said, this is going to be a spoiler video. So if you haven't read Volume 18, or if you're an anime only who has not read the light novels, please step away. This is obviously going to be content covered in Season 5, and we'll obviously do a video when Season 5 drops. But this is all content that is going to be appearing in Season 5 of Danmachi. So I would urge you guys to step away from this video if you haven't read the light novel, or if you haven't read any of the light novels, because I don't want you guys to get spoiled, alright? And the second thing I want to mention as well is that I will be doing a spoiler stream later this weekend, so you guys can come in and obviously talk about everything Danmachi Volume 18 completely freely in the live chat. I'll be open to discussions. We'll probably play Danmimo or Danmachi Battle Chronicle in the background, but it will be focused on talking entirely about Danmachi Volume 18. I'm gonna have the book open as well so that I can be reading and, you know, covering certain points and aspects about the light novel live on stream. So be there. I will set up a live stream probably in the next day or so basically as well. Now, before we get into this video, of course, if you guys go on to enjoy it, remember to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Of course, feel free to have at it. Of course, this is a spoiler video, so I hope that everybody has read the light novel, especially if you're going to be delving into the spoiler section, of course, or the comment section, I should say, more so. I mean, it'll be a spoiler section anyways, but in the comment section, try and stay away from there if you aren't interested in any spoilery comments or anything of that sort. Now, like I said, this light novel, Volume 18, is probably one of the most divisive light novels. I had to actually read this light novel twice because I had such, I had to get a grasp of exactly what was being thrown in my face by Amori sensei, right? It's one of those things that you kind of have to read at least 2 or 3 times, in my opinion, to get an idea on exactly how you feel about this light novel. And I'm already gonna say it straight up here, I think this is a really good light novel. Honestly, I think a lot of people overreacted, in my personal opinion, based on what we knew. Even I, to be honest, to an extent, felt like it was a little bit 50-50. In all honesty, I liked the light novel, but I felt like there were definitely some issues that I wanted clarifying in the English translation. And honestly, they've been clarified, I feel like they've been clarified and they were explained really well, which I feel like a lot of people just took whatever was out of context and just ran with it. And of course, that leads to obviously very divisive thoughts, like I've been saying. I think that is going to be the key word in this video, divisive. It's going to be, it was going to lead to that anyways, right? People would have had one opinion about it, other people would have had another opinion about it, right? And I feel like it was always going to be the case. Volume 18 and the entire Freya arc, shall we call it, because the thing is, right, one of the things that Amori mentioned at the end of the light novel in the afterword is that he's been actually counting Volume 12 to Volume 18 as one arc. He's called it the fertility arc, which I guess kind of makes sense with Ryu and everything, but still I would probably put them as 2 very separate arcs, obviously intertwined in a way with, of course, the Ryu stuff and Belle's growth and everything, but still quite separate in itself, in all honesty. But that's how Amori looks at it anyways. But of course, you know, this arc has was always going to be a bit of an issue for a lot of people because it was obviously dealing with one of the biggest and strongest familiars in the Freya familia, and it was the Hestia familia basically taking them on from the very get-go, and that was going to be practically hard to translate into a light novel, especially when the Hestia Familia are such underdogs in comparison to the Freya Familia, right? So I felt like it was always going to be a hard task, but honestly, from what I've read and everything, I felt that they did a great job. In all honesty, they did a great job in that situation. Now, the thing is, right, I want to also talk about the translation before we get into the actual content as well. I must admit, Yen Press, y'all need to get an editor, man. Y'all need to get an editor or proofreader, something here, because the amount of translation issues I noticed here and there was kind of crazy. I noticed it more so on my second read. The first read, I didn't really pay too much attention because I was actually engrossed by the content, which kind of carried it big time. Thank God the content was actually very interesting and exhilarating enough to the point where I was kind of ignoring those grammatical issues, punctuation errors, some missing bits of context here and there. But again, for the most part, I felt like, you know, in the first read, it was very easily ignorable. The second read over, though, I mean, come on, there is something wrong at Yen Press's systems. I don't know. I trust me when I say this. Dale DeLucia, I think he's the one who's doing the translations for these light novels. I mean, I'm assuming he's a great translator. But the problem is, if you don't have a proofreader to work with this translator, he's obviously going to be rushed into doing some release. And of course, that release, if it doesn't go well, it's noticeable. It is very much so noticeable. So hopefully in the future, you know, for Astrea Records releases and Volume 19 and the other light novels that are yet to release for Danmachi, they get a proofreader because they desperately need one. 100% they need one, because the errors I've seen in this light novel were kind of surprising to me, to be quite honest. They were kind of surprising to me. Now, I want to start off with what was the first chapter, which was basically double role and introducing Freya's, what I like to call it, kind of like split personality, and how it was formed, obviously, right? Now, Freya is a very interesting character to me, and I mean, of course, y'all already know that she is one of my top waifus, of course, right? If not my number one waifu in Danmachi, and maybe I might be a little bit biased here, of course, that may come across quite well in my video here, but one thing I will say is that a lot of people kind of misunderstand Freya a little bit here, right? The thing is, Freya has been in this spotlight for so long, in the sense of being the goddess of beauty, the goddess of love. There's expectations, there's stereotypes, and there's a underlying internal sort of like confirmation that she is this goddess of beauty. And but the thing is, right, she doesn't realize it as well. Like they kind of mention it at the start, like, oh, she's the goddess of love, but she doesn't understand it necessarily. And then, of course, one of her fellow goddesses talks about her odor, and it kind of evolves into this obsession, effectively, to try and become this person that she isn't, right? And this is very well explained throughout the chapter and throughout the book itself, actually, as well, which I really, really like. The stuff with Freya, Mia and Freya later on as well, which I really, really liked as well. We'll come on to that later on as well. I think they were handled exceptionally well. And I feel like, yes, I understand why a lot of people might have hate towards Freya. Don't get me wrong, what she did wasn't a good thing, of course, right? Controlling and manipulating an entire city to effectively, you know, and mind raping them effectively, let's be real, right? And then along with that, trying to effectively take control of just this one kid, basically, it's crazy. It's crazy and undeniably on the morally bad side. But the thing is, right, you have to understand is that this is thousands of years of effectively self-infliction by Freya in this obsession to become this or to try and find her significant other, basically, right? And I think that definitely does have an impact. A lot of people think that, okay, you know, you can just get away with it, and she just got away with it, and you know, she's bad, but they're painting her out to be a good person. But that's the thing, good people can become evil if bad things happen to them, or if they go through a very, very dark period in their lifetime where they're just unaware of who they are or what they are. And I think, obviously, I feel like Amori could have done maybe a little bit more there. And I think that's where I'll probably say that maybe actually extending the book might not have been a bad idea. I know that this was apparently rewritten. This light novel was rewritten, I think, 4 or 5 times because it was just too long. But I feel like the greater length would have worked in this situation. It would have absolutely worked in this situation, because getting more of Freya and understanding Freya a lot more would have definitely helped our audience a lot more as well, for sure. I 100% believe that. But yeah, so the first chapter is all about Freya's, double personality, basically, this persona that she already has as a basis, which is basically her seer side, the more calmer, the more normal girl kind of character that she has, and she is, right? That is the person she is. And then this persona that she's created over time, this goddess Freya personality that she's created over these thousands of years of like stereotypes, this sort of like expectations and so on and so forth, right? That she's cultivated not only because of other people, but on her also because of herself as well. This idea to become the goddess of love and understanding love and so on and so forth. So that was, I think, well done. That first chapter was well done. Then we swiftly move on to effectively the immediate aftermath of volume 17, which is of course Belle's return to the Hestia Familia, and this discussion of the war games and everything. And of course we get into the fact that Hestia is unable to recruit the Loki Familia. Now, this is something that was quite contentious, and we'll talk about this in an entirety right now, because of course we don't not only have the fact that Loki and the familiar Loki Familia could not participate, we also had the fact that unfortunately Eyes could not help Belle either. Now we'll split them up into two separate things, and we'll focus on the Loki Familia first and foremost, right? The Loki Familia stuff, in my opinion, was handled absolutely fantastic, in all honesty. I think a lot of people had this notion that, oh, Loki Familia hasn't participated, immediate L book, L plus ratio sort of thing. And it's like, come on, you had to be realistic, because if it was Loki Familia plus the entirety of Orario, well, it would be an easy dub, in my personal opinion, for the entirety of Orario plus Loki Familia, compared to obviously what ended up happening, especially with Haruhime being in the mix. And then you have, of course, the three, the captains and the vice captains of Loki Familia, of Finn and, Riveri and Gareth, and then not to mention the rest of the roster as well. It would have been super one-sided, in my personal opinion, of course, right? It would have been super one-sided, and it wouldn't have even been funnier. But the thing is, right, it wouldn't have been any fun. It wouldn't have been even funny, sorry, is what I meant to say. The thing is, right, I also feel at the same time, however, right, the way they explained it is perfect, in my personal opinion. Finn didn't want to budge at all, and I think this interaction between Finn and Royman caused a lot of flack towards Finn for some reason. And I still don't understand why, when Finn was literally pushed into a corner by Royman. Royman is the only person here, arguably, that we can kind of say was the bad person in this situation, for effectively trying to gas up the greater good and, ignoring what happened to, the entirety of Orario. I was gonna say Hestia Familia, but the entirety of Orario. He was just ignoring it for the fact that, well, he has to appease to the Freya Familia. And second of all, he's got this notion of this generation is the best generation that can possibly take on the One-Eyed Black Dragon, which I know a lot of people would also argue against, because Zeus and Hera had some amazing monsters in their party and they still failed. And the fact that Royman's gassing up this generation, obviously a lot of people were questioning that entirely. But I think that it also makes sense in a way. I mean, you look like Belle, Eyes, the three, top dogs of the Loki Familia, Otaro, and so on and so forth. And you've got yourself an amazing roster of characters, and not to mention the supporting cast members of like Heath, Haruhime, and so on and so forth. Characters that are able to just support massively, like supporting to another level. Krozo, Welf and his magic swords and his craftsmanship, Mikoto, gravity magic, so on and so forth. It's crazy the amount of people that we have. So Royman isn't necessarily wrong there, but even still, Finn was not budging on the fact that he wanted to help the Hestia Familia and the rest of Orario take on the Loki Familia, until, of course, the dungeon information came through. Now this, in my opinion, is something more of a long-term thing. The reasoning as to why Finn and the rest of the Loki Familia are so keen on figuring out this information is going to be very interesting, because there's something about a key and a her, which I for some reason, I tried looking back at some of the older light novels, and I couldn't get an idea on exactly what they're referring to here. My assumption is it has to do something with maybe like Arya and eyes, of course, potentially something along those lines. I have to assume, because there's no other reason as to why Finn and the rest of the Loki familia would be willing to, just, buckle down a little bit like this so easily with only information about the dungeon. And not to mention the fact that, well, Zeus and Hera were the only familiars to be able to tackle those floors, right? 60 and onwards, basically, right? So it was very important for them to be able to get this information and to help themselves when they went that deep into those lower floors, of course, right? So obviously it was quite interesting to say the least, and it's going to be quite interesting to see what comes of that later on. Of course, nobody in the Loki family was happy with that either. I mean, Bet was going crazy. Tiona was really frustrated at the fact that she couldn't actually fight alongside Argonaut, and that is to say Belle, her Argonaut, and Belle, of course. Theone was also mad as well. The Loki familia, I think they did a great job in showing the feelings of the Loki familia while also explaining really well why they couldn't join in as well. And then we come on to Eyes, who basically was just denied complete access to Belle, training, helping, whatever it may be. She could not do anything with Belle because of her promise to Ottarl and the favors that she owed to Freya. Now, a lot of people say that, well, she can break a promise to a person who is this evil, right? Come on, you can't not break a promise like this. You have to remember that it was a massive favor. The fact that, the thing is, right, Eyes went into that training session with Ottarl thinking of the fact that, well, it's just a training session with Ottarl, and even if I do owe a favor to Freya, what do I own that she doesn't already own? Well, the only thing you do own, Eyes, that she doesn't own is Belle's heart. So of course there was gonna be that sort of thing going on there for sure, no matter what, right? Obviously Eyes didn't know, but that was going to happen. That's the first point, right? And the second point is that, well, the thing is, right, in Japan, especially Japanese culture, the idea of breaking a promise is breaking a favor is insanely disrespectful. It is really, really disrespectful. So obviously we were going to see that translate into Amori's writing as well, even though obviously Orario is set in a different universe, in a different world. Obviously certain aspects of real life, especially Japanese culture, will translate into the light novel, and of course it does translate into this as well. You aren't going to obviously break a promise that you gave, especially when they did such a big favor for you as well. The training sessions and everything with Ottarl, like, come on, it's crazy. They didn't need to do it. They're two rival familiars, so of course they weren't gonna do it. A normal familiar member would not even endorse helping out a rival familiar's member as well, right? But obviously Ottarl did, and of course that makes a lot of sense as to why they did it, because of the amazing favor that Freya had in her hand in terms of just the power that she held over Eyes after said training session, of course, right? So I think that was another thing that they nailed exceptionally well. That chapter as a whole, which I think was this chapter, the first chapter right after Double Roll 2, I think it was dealt extremely well. I think they did a good job there. Then came basically what was the War Games preparation arc, and I think that this was done really well. I loved it. This setup and the build up was so good, in my opinion. I think they did such a good job of this. If there's one thing I can't deny was bad at all, it was this. You could probably argue there are some faults in, of course, the first chapter with Finn and Royman and Eyes and the Loki family and everything, not to mention certain other things as well. But overall, I feel like if there's one chapter that they absolutely nailed really well, it was the second chapter where they were talking about all the familiars, who all were participating. It was like Hephaestus familia is set to join the war. Ganesha familia can't join the war because they are obviously in command of the police, which, by the way, I love that section with the Ganesha familia. There was that one side of Ilta and the fact that she was a major outlaw and now she's one of the vice captain, not one of the vice captain of the Ganesha familia. We got a small mention of Ardi as well in there as well. Really well done. I think that was such a nice touch as well. But of course, and this light novel super Australia Familiar heavy, and we'll talk about that later on, but very Australia Familiar and Australia Record heavy for sure as well, right? A lot of references I felt were coming in from Australia Record as well. But like I said, they did a great job in, nailing that. We had the Modi Familia and Mugi Familia. Then we had the Ogma Familia and Mord. And I love the way they were, Ogma Familia's members were teasing Mord in a way, saying that, oh, you care for Bell. Don't lie. You've been saying this for a very long time, but we know you care about that boy. We know you care about Rabbitfoot or Little Rookie. Then we obviously had, other familiars come in. Taki Mikazuchi, Miak Familia, and so on and so forth. The Goddess Alliance as well. So well done. So well done. I absolutely adored it. You guys can let me know what was your favorite chapter in the entire light novel. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say down below. But yes, that second chapter was absolutely brilliant. In my personal opinion, I absolutely adored it. We also got to see Belle's level up as well. And I want to talk about Vanadis Tavares. Now, this, in my opinion, is one of the shittiest skills I've ever seen Belle get. I'm not gonna lie. I am sorry, Belle, but you have gotten absolutely horrid luck, bro. Oxslayer, I know it's meant for Astrayas, but like, fucking hell, are you serious? Only against Minotaurs, really? Really? At least make it so that against monsters or something, I don't know, make it much better than what it is already. Oxslayer was the disappointing skill in itself. Vanadis Tavares is even worse, man. It is so bad because it only activates when Charm is activated. This is another thing that I'm not a big fan of in this light novel. It's just Belle's skills have been horrendous. Everything else about him is good. His passive abilities, his stats, everything is nice. It's just his skills, bro. It's just his two skills. Like, bro, come on, man. Amori, my guy, he can't be doing Belle dirty like this. I know he's OP already, but like, give him something, bro. Give him something that's actually good or something, a good magic skill or something, because Vanadis is horrible in my personal opinion. And the thing is, sure, maybe the stats boost you get from it is insane, and maybe they can use it in the OEBD raid. Maybe like a character can inflict charm on Belle purposefully, but like, then at that point you could have just gone for a normal skill or something. Like, come on. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Vanadis. I think they could have done a way better job there. Way better job than what they gave him here. That was one of the biggest issues I had with this light novel as well, is the fact that Belle's skills just don't seem to be any good in my personal opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Then, of course, we obviously had also the other characters getting a bit of a stats boost and level up as well. The training that we saw with Belle and Tiona, as well as we saw a little bit of Lily and Finn, talking about strategies and, how to command entire force, basically an entire army, which I think was great as well. We were seeing Hayden getting a little bit of respect as well throughout the last two chapters, the first and the second chapter, of course, as well, which I think was great. Finn was gassing him up big time, saying he was one of the best strategists, if not the best strategist in Aurario, alongside him as well. So yeah, I think I really liked this entire chapter, like I said, with the whole, aspect of, just the way they approached the whole training and war games preparation arc. I think it was fantastic. Honestly, so good. So good. Then we move on to monologue 6. And now before this, we also got to see that some of the Hermes Familia participated. Not all of them, only some of them. Aisha in particular wanted to participate. Hermes was trying to stay away from participating because if everybody lost, then Freya would have complete control over everybody's familiars. So Hermes was like, I cannot participate just on the basis of if everybody loses, I need to still be there. Our familiar needs to still be there to make sure everything is working in order. Asfi was going to participate. She was going to join the coalition alongside Aisha as an external member, but unfortunately her name was caught out immediately, saying her name on purpose was just denied, saying, nah, not happening. Sorry lads, it ain't happening, chief. You're not being able to participate. And I'm like, I was like, damn, they really thought about some of these things here. Fair enough, in terms of the rules and banning certain adventures and stuff. Insane. It was an insane time. Then we move on to monologue 6, like I said, right? And this is where things got interesting, because you obviously had this chapter being a full-on, like it's as it suggests, as the name suggests, it was a proper full-on monologue, which I thought was pretty interesting. I mean, it was it definitely interrupted it a little bit. I felt I was kind of surprised about how they decided to introduce this, and I'm looking at it right now and I'm just trying to see if I've missed out on anything. But this was the chapter which I also really liked as well, because Mia and Freya's interactions and how Mia became a part of the Freya family and everything, and obviously Mia talking about or Mia reminiscing a little bit, and I guess Freya also reminiscing a little bit at this point about how Freya literally said that even if I turn evil, don't stop me trying to find my odor. And I was like, damn, the way they were, the lines were written and everything was super well done, super well done. And I feel like this also showcased Mia and Freya's relationship a little bit better. Mia did not take any shit from Freya, which I loved a lot. And it also showed how Mia found Freya, and she found the Freya that was a normal girl, not the goddess Freya. And she must have also seen this transition into becoming this goddess Freya over the years, of course, right? Which I think must have been very fascinating. And I would have loved to have seen in episode Freya this more so, this Freya and Mia more so. Obviously we got to see the Freya familia in its entirety in episode Freya, but I would have loved to seen more Mia and Freya, how the origins, the start, everything of that sort would have been fantastic to see. Maybe we might get an episode Freya volume 2, who knows, but we'll have to wait and see on that front. Then we move on to the next chapter, which is all about Anya and the hostess of fertility. The rest of the members are trying to get Anya out, but Anya has been absolutely scarred because of the whole situation with the Freya familia and everything. And again, this chapter was effectively the start of the war games to effectively its end. Basically, it was literally from the start to the end. It was all about just going from start to finish, which I thought was kind of surprising. In all honesty, I was kind of surprised about it. If I go back to this, right, I'm going back to the light novel again, and I'm just looking at this, and yeah, it was literally just the entire chapter was dedicated to just fully going in to the war games in its entirety, start to finish. People get, recruits happening, the fight itself. And the moment we get into the war games itself, right, I think the one thing that I loved about the war games is that every fight was explained in such detail. It was so exhilarating reading it. Again, I think that the most important thing I feel like this light novel did was the action was high octane. I will admit, some of it was definitely a little bit plot armory. In my opinion, I do believe some of it was plot armory. I also felt that, some of the decision making from the Freya familia side was kind of stupid, in all honesty, especially the whole we forgot to ban outside familiars. I think that was kind of like, come on, really? How did you forget that? You banned Perseus, but you forgot to ban outside familiars, because of course, midway through the fight, and we'll come on to that, we see other familiar members, including the hostess of fertility, joining in the fight, and we'll talk about that, like I said, later on in this video. But the start of the familiar war games was super high octane. Like I said, it was like there was this sort of like palpable tension, the hide and seek format, which, by the way, the hide and seek format is basically the adventurers have to find the other familiar's gods/goddesses and take their flower. In the case of the Coalition and Hestia Familia specifically, there were multiple gods and goddesses. On the other side, you only had Freya. So there was one target for the Coalition, multiple targets for the Freya Familia. And the Freya Familia was the only familia that participated on the Freya Familia side, because Freya said that she wants to do this on her own accord and with her own familia. Nobody else can join. Hence why the Modi Familia and stuff decided to join the Hestia Familia, even though they were allies of Freya. Which was kind of funny. The way they were acting throughout was kind of funny, to be quite honest. The gods themselves, that is, Modi and stuff. I think it was great. It was absolutely brilliant. But the thing is, right, with the start of the familiar war games, insane tension. And then the moment when some of the scouts, because initially Lily, what she did was she sent scouts out to see where the familiars were coming in from, and this entire fight took place in the same region where Ice, Hestia, and Belle actually, got lost in volume 8. Not in the village itself, of course, but in the mountain range itself, basically. So this was very well set up in the sense of like, okay, this is a proper familiar war games. and they, Lily was sending in scouts and stuff, and then one set of scouts basically says they're all in one place, they're not splitting up, they're not doing anything, they're all in one place. And then Lily is just in shock. She's like, shit, what's happening here then? Whoa, how's this happened? And then obviously they come to that realization that this strategy would only work with such a powerful familiar like the Freya familiar. Again, the tension, the way they structured it was so nice. I loved, again, the way it was described made it so nice. Again, I feel like this is something that is coming in from my first read. This excitement factor and everything was that was insane. It was honestly insane. And then we got to see some fights happen, proper fights happen. We obviously saw the coalition using the magic swords getting absolutely flipped on its head as well immediately, and the coalition losing some members, and the Freya familia outmatching and outclassing everybody there. And of course it was becoming one-sided slowly but surely. Heath went on to show why she was the golden witch, of course, as well, which I love the way they tried to compare Heath versus Ahmed as well, because Ahmed was known as the best healer, but Heath is known as the best healing combat character, because she is not only proficient in healing, but she also has an insane level of combat expertise, and that's why she's so strong and so good. So it was so well done. Again, this artwork of Heath was amazing as well, showcasing how strong she is as well as a healer, which is insane to see, of course, right? And then we saw Hegni come into the fray. We saw the Gulliver brothers, Alan as well, and Hayden leading the lines and everything. It was pretty insane. And then the tides turned. Of course, we see Ryu coming in, we see Mia coming in, we see all of these other characters just spawning out of nowhere. And then of course, while the Hestia familia is on their last legs, we see of course the other gods and goddesses losing out. Again, it's a very cliche, and this is where I will say it's a little bit cliche in the way Omori wrote this entire fight, is that initially it looks like the Hestia familia have the upper hand, and then they just start losing considerably, right? Big time, because of course they're overpowering them. They take away the flowers from all these gods and goddesses that are a part of the coalition, which removes them out from the war games entirely, leaving only the Hestia familia to be the last man standing, basically. And then we see everybody coming in. Njord, Demeter, Astrea, sorry, I was gonna say Artemis. Artemis is not in this chapter, unfortunately, but Astrea coming in, of course, because of Ryu as well. So every one of these familiars come in and they show up, and it becomes that sort of like Avengers Endgame-esque moment where it's like on your right, Cap, or something, and it's like on your left, sorry, and it just turns the tides around in the favor of the coalition and the Hestia familia. I think, again, like I said, very cliche, but again, it's just well written, in my opinion. It's so exhilarating. It just it hits those neurons, in my opinion. It hits those neurons where it just gets that adrenaline and excitement going in your body, which I think is the most important thing as a reader, in my personal opinion. I think that is the most important thing as a reader, is that adrenaline and stuff should be going high, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. Cliche, but adored it nonetheless. Now, we talk about the level up, the double level up of Ryu, because that is effectively the next thing we should talk about before the final fight, which again is also very controversial. I feel a lot of people did not really like the amount of plot armor in that final fight, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's talk about Ryu's double level up, which IMO was explained well in this light novel, and is of course further explained in another light novel, which we'll get on to in the future when we do get to it. But based on what we have in this light novel, this double level up that happened to Ryu, I think they explained it really well. Of course, everybody was so surprised and everybody was so shocked. It was sort of like that moment where effectively it's like, oh my god, everybody just stands up. It's very Ultra Instinct Goku-esque when, Beerus and the Gods of Destruction get up to kind of like pay their respects to what is effectively a sight to behold. It was kind of like that. I wouldn't say it was to that scale, but it was sort of like that, where Hermes was like shocked that a double level up happened. Everybody was like, oh my god, a double level up from level 4 to level 6? And it makes sense in a way. I mean, they explained it really well. she was already on the higher end of level 4 initially, to the point where all she needed was effectively a lot of stats, and along with it, a bunch of great feats. And she got a bunch of great feats. Remember, she's killed an entire set of familia, you know, the Rudra familia. Then she went on a rampage to effectively tear apart, you know, Juggy, Goliath, help out with the Apollo familia war games as well, and so on and so forth. She's done a lot in her past, right? Between the events of, you know, Juggy killing the Astrea familia to what is effectively the present timeline with the war games, of course, right? She's done a lot, so it makes sense as to why she's become level 7 or level 6. Sorry, level 7 is a bit too far now. That would have been a bit surprising to me as well, but a double level up to 6 made just a lot of sense to me, I think, you know. And a lot of people say like, oh, it never happened before, so it's a plot armor and an asphalt. But of course, yes, because it's never happened before, so it's surely not going to be a surprise to everybody. And of course, the thing is, right, a lot of people say like, why hasn't somebody else gotten a double level up? Well, nobody's gone 5 years without updating their status. And if they haven't updated their status, it's because they can't update their status and never did update their status. Whereas Ryu finally got the opportunity to update her status, and she's been through a lot. So I think it makes sense in that regards. Let me know what you guys think about this one. I think the double level up is, again, one of the more controversial and one of the more divisive things as well. I just think it made a lot of sense, especially knowing what we know based on, of course, the you know, everything that happened, of course, in the past. And I love the fact that she's got on the Astrea magic, man. Again, this is one of the things I would love to see for Belle, is him getting the skills that Ryu managed to get here, man. Because she managed to get pretty much everybody's magic from the Astrea familia. Elise, Kaguya, Lyra, everybody's magic is imbued in her. She's basically got an inheritance, which is insane. Insane. It's crazy how powerful Ryu is going to be just alone with her magic. It's crazy. It is absolutely nuts, in all honesty. Then we move on to effectively the major fight itself, right? Now, this is where, obviously, as I said, Hayden and Hegni, you know, effectively betrayed the Freya familia as well. This was very interesting to me, to be quite honest, because I wasn't expecting it when we first got to know about it. I wasn't thinking that would happen. It was looking possible, but I didn't think it was going to happen, and it did happen. Now, to me personally, I think it was okay the way it was handled. Maybe it could have been set up a little bit more. Maybe the reasoning could have been a bit better from Hayden and Hegni. I feel like Hayden more so than Hegni. Hegni is just, you know, running with the flow and getting kind of manipulated a little bit by Hayden. Hegni is like that, to be honest. I like Hegni's character. Very two-sided in a way, right? Very internally kind of like an introvert and kind of crazy in that regards. And then on the outside, he's a different character and everybody's a bit scared of him, you know? Which is kind of funny, to be quite honest. Hayden betraying Freya, I get his reasoning and stuff. I do think that they could have probably explained it a lot better in the light novel. It felt like, of course, the focus was on the action primarily, which is absolutely fine. So the dialogue at some points felt a little choppy. That's one thing I would probably criticize Amori for a little bit in this light novel, is that the dialogue sometimes felt a little bit choppy. That could also be down to translation errors. I don't know, but I felt like the dialogue was a little choppy at times, where, you know, maybe a couple more lines could have worked. Didn't happen, unfortunately. And again, this comes back to what I said earlier on in the video. I feel like a longer book would have probably helped a lot more, for sure. Maybe an extra 100 pages, 150 pages, probably would have done the job. And that's a fairly good amount of pages, by the way. I'm adding on as well, by the way. Fairly good amount of pages. So I think that definitely they could have done a little bit more there. But overall, I got the point. And it was quite interesting to see Hayden and Hegni join in with Belle and the rest of the coalition, right? And so now came the point where Belle was, I mean, he was getting absolutely hammered by Otaro by this point, and then Ryu comes in and helps him out. Belle gets a mid-fight status upgrade and a status update by Hestia, and joins the fight with Mia and Ryu and Hayden and Hegni. Now, I loved this fight. To be quite honest, I loved this fight even before. When Ryu and Mia were fighting with Otaro, absolutely loved it. Mia absolutely boying Otaro was so good. She was just calling him Boar Boy, Boyo, and stuff like that. So good. I cannot wait to see that in the anime. It's gonna be so funny. And just seeing this lady come up with a shovel to just beat up one of the strongest, if not the strongest adventurer in the world at this point in time. Because of course he's one of the 2 level 7s in the world, right? It would have been so funny. It would have been absolutely hilarious. And I cannot wait to see it in the anime. Honestly, it's gonna be such a good watch for sure, right? But this fight as a whole was such a nice read. Honestly, some plot armor for sure. I do believe there was some plot armor going from this fight to the end, of course, right? But I felt like overall, you know, the exhilaration, again, just the pure thrill of the fight helped it a lot. Absolutely helped it a lot. I think that the main thing I would say about this light novel, and kind of to sum it all up, is that there are a lot of niggling issues, but I don't feel like they accumulate to a lot, to be honest, because everything happens in such separate situations that it doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of this light novel, in my personal opinion. Like, Chapter 1 have a little bit of an issue. Chapter 2 I think was great, in all honesty. I don't think there was that much of an issue in Chapter 2. Chapter 3, little bit of issues here and there, but very different moments, because this chapter is like 150 pages long. It's the biggest chapter in the light novel because it's the entire War Games arc in one chapter, right? But the fight was brilliant. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Obviously, we got to see Bell use limit off against Otaro as well, as you can see with these images as well and everything. Now, the thing is, a lot of people will say that also Bell should not have been able to topple Otaro. But this is the level boosted Bell, first and foremost. And yes, while I agree that Otaro was close, if not just at level 8 with this beastification, of course, right? Because that was something that they talked about as well, which I was kind of surprised that the Loki familiar was surprised that Otaro was close to level 8. I was kind of shocked by that, because I would have been like, well, duh, he's got to be close to level 8. He got to level 7 like years and years ago, so of course he's going to be close to level 8. Surprised that they were surprised, to be honest, but of course with the beastification, him getting to level 8, him taking on effectively like 4 or 5 level 7s, and then a level 6 pseudo boosted by Haruhime, of course. I think while yes, it would have been unlikely, you have to remember that this is like a 5v1, and on top of that, we're going with the limit off Bell as well, right? Insane power is going to come through. And even still, by the way, even still, all they could do with Otaro was just bring him on his knees for 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes, and that's it. And he would have been all right to go right after that. And so from there, Bell obviously goes up against Alan to chase, basically have a race to Freya. Alan to stop Bell, and Bell to get to Freya and remove the flower. And this is where another thing happens, where people were a little bit surprised that Bell's escape ability was enough to outpace Alan, which I think it would have been better if it was Alan versus Bell, but Alan was a little faster, just a teeny tiny bit faster, and then escape helps Bell just push him over the edge, or just a little bit over the edge, or put him on pace with Alan, which would allow him to make that distance to Freya, because obviously Bell gets that head start. Obviously that didn't happen here. Instead, Alan was the one who was catching up to Bell, and then Bell just outpaces him insanely, which I was kind of surprised by, to be quite honest. And again, that would be another plot armor thing I would probably point out, but again, not a major issue in the grand scheme of things, I feel personally, especially because we know Bell's agility is insane and all through the charts as well, based on his stats. And I assume at this point he was still boosted by Haruhime as well, so that's also something to bear in mind, I think, as well, that he has Haruhime's boost, he has that agility, and then he also has on top of that all the escape ability. So in that regards, maybe fair enough, I guess, but still, you could make an argument and say that maybe it could have been dealt a little better. And then, of course, the War Games ends, basically, because Bell gets to Freya, takes off the flower, and wins it all for the Coalition, and, of course, the entirety of Aurario, basically. So, in my opinion, the War Games was handled really well. I thought that the way people were describing it, and some of the Japanese translators were describing it, I felt like it was going to be a shit show, to be quite honest. And I thought I was going to be defending thin air. But honestly, there's a lot of good things to defend about in this light novel and this specific War Games. Sure, I can concede some points, like the plot armor and stuff, but I genuinely loved everything else about the way they handled this. You know, the level ups for Ryu, the introduction and addition of Mia and everybody else into the familiars, and as well also into the fight itself. You know, Bell's fights and so on and so forth. Lily commanding the commanding the field. How Mikoto, Welf were playing their role in the fight. Mord playing his role in the fight as well, and so were the other familiar members. I think super well done, super well done, and I cannot wait to see it adapted. It's gonna be an actual joy to watch it adapted. Now we move on to the final chapter and the epilogue, basically, because I'll count it as both effectively in one. This was where I think again a little bit of divisiveness comes into play, where obviously Freya's familiars completely disbanded. They are, you know, absolutely just torn apart. Everything's been taken. Folk Wagner has been taken. Freya's fortunes have been taken. She's just talking to Mia at the Hostess of Fertility, taking a drink basically. Then realizes that she doesn't have money to drink anything, and then Mia's like, well, you can work it off if you want, but she's like, I can't stay in Orario. I'm supposed to leave. What do you mean work it off? What do you mean work it off? And obviously Royman was absolutely surprised, and I'll start with this first. Royman was completely surprised that Freya lost in the first place, which goes to show how much Royman was like banking on the fact that, well, Hesia's gonna lose no matter what, so may as well appease the Freya family as much as possible before the war games begins, so that we can go into this absolutely, you know, doubling up basically, and we'll not lose a top familiar. But, well, you lost top familiar, everybody's gone and disappeared. But effectively, Royman said that we cannot afford what happened to the Apollo Familia, and, well, you know, what happened to the captain of the Apollo Familia and Apollo himself to happen to the Freya Familia, and we need the Freya Familia members to stay in Orario. There's nowhere they can go. They cannot be sent out. They have to be in Orario, maybe find other familiars or something, but they will have to stay. Freya, however, was to be sent to exile, and effectively what ended up happening after that entire discussion with Mia about, you know, that she can't afford a drink and she can't work it off, Mia basically says, well, technically, you know, a certain goddess basically said that you can, you know, the goddess Freya should leave, but a normal working girl, you know, can stay in Orario. And so that basically meant that Seer could stay in Orario, but of course Freya had to disappear. Freya's personality had to go entirely. And this is where it becomes a little bit of a thing where a lot of people got frustrated that Freya had such an easy punishment, you know, exile as well. She should have been sent back to Tenkai and stuff. And to be honest, I don't see that. I didn't think that was a major issue, to be quite honest, especially because in all honesty, I think that the exile was absolutely fair. In all honesty, I think that would have made sense, maybe sending Freya out elsewhere, and then maybe she can make a comeback to update all of her familiar status for the One-Eyed Black Dragon. I think I would have been absolutely fine with that. But I'm also okay with this fact that where Freya is a separate identity and Seer is a separate identity, because that's what it is at the end of the day, right? Freya's identity as a whole, the goddess Freya personality, and this is what we talked about at the start of the video, is completely different to the personality that is with, of course, Seer. And so Seer is the personality that she's riding on, and this Freya personality has been entirely killed effectively by that familiar war games, and of course Belle just saying, no, I'm not loving you, sorry girl, that ain't happening, chief. And in my opinion, I think that they did that, that Omori did that well, absolutely. And then of course the Hostess of Fertility absolutely ragging into Freya, slapping her, Anya hugging her and saying don't go see her and stuff like that. It was very nice. It was absolutely very nice, and I cannot I cannot say anything really too negative about that. I think it was very sweet. It was a very nice ending overall, and the fact that she can say a seer is, I think, fine for me personally. I think a lot of people will definitely find this a little bit you know, two-sided. That there will be two sides to this. Some people would have wanted her to just disappear and go away. Some people don't mind her staying. I think that's up to the person's point of view. Personally, to me, I think it's fair because it's again, like I say, I think of it as two different personalities entirely. One cultivated over a period of time, and one that was already there, seen by many people, including Mia herself and other gods and goddesses back in Tenkai at some points, but never really seen by everybody at the same time, you know? So I think the fact that that latter personality is the one dominant right now, and of course the only one there, I think, because like I said, I think she's entirely killed off that evil persona of Freya. I think it's fine. I think it's absolutely fine. Some people said that, oh well, what if she does it again? But I mean, she's done with everything. The only person that she loves is Belle, and she said that she still loves him, but she's not gonna go crazy for him at this point in time. So I mean, it's done. It's been done and dusted. So for me personally, I think it's fine. I have no issues with it anymore, and she can stay in Orario. And not to mention, if she stays in Orario, she can keep updating the status of her familiars. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's how it works. I could be wrong. She can still update the status of her familiars or familiar members. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, of course, in the future light novels. They also show, like, you know, the Freya Familia, and they're talking like, well, did you guys, you know, they were talking to Hayden and Hegni specifically, saying, do you guys think you guys did the right thing? And you're like, well, we'll see. We'll see. And no, they talk about what their plans are and what they're gonna do and stuff, which we'll obviously see in the next light novel. But yes, overall, really enjoyed this light novel. I wanted to tackle the major points here, specifically the Freya stuff, the familiar war games, the level ups and stuff like that, and I hope I did that in this video. Of course, like I said, I want to do a separate live stream where we go deeper in. I'm gonna have the light novel with me open as well, and of course, when we do the live stream as well, I want you guys to be there to participate with me as well in this discussion as well. So hopefully you guys tune into that. I think that will be a lot bigger, and also we can get a lot more out as well. But yes, let me know what you guys think of the light novel in the comment section down below. We might read some of them on the live stream as well, so feel free to leave your thoughts as well in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please be sure to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Bye bye.